The world revolves around business, society, organizations, individuals, and even religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice, empowerment, environmental, and other issues too. Every week, Business Matters will delve into aspects of business that impact our lives. We will seek out extraordinary and ordinary people who have done extraordinary things. Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Moolla for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, it's Monday evening, the 12th of February. It's gone 12 minutes past 7 and you on Business Matters with me, Anwar Moolla. Been away from the mic for way too long. I think the last program I did on Business Matters was sometime in December due to various circumstances, my travel as well as the souk and all of that came in between. I haven't been on the airwaves, but it's wonderful to be back and back with you on the Business Matters program as normal on a Monday evening. Thanks for all those who stood in for me, Fozia Peer and a whole myriad of others that took over the program and kept the fires burning, so to speak. And again, good to be back and behind the mic on the Business Matters program. Tonight I have a very interesting guest, and he's joined us telephonically from Johannesburg. And his name is Eugene Meitjies. Eugene, welcome to Radio Al Ansar, and please correct me if I've pronounced that wrongly.
Good on, well, it's 100% I get my surname pronounced incorrectly, and I am used to that. It's Meitjies. That's fine. Just the way you want to say it.
You can say Meital is nie by Kutni, so yeah, we're from Durban, so
it doesn't matter. It's not a problem.
Eugene, thanks for giving up your evening and spending some time with us on Radio Al Ansar. And tonight we're going to be discussing and enlightening the listeners on the legalities that are involved in terms of starting a new business. So you're going to help me to kind of unravel some of the legalities and some of the pitfalls in terms of starting a small business. And just as a background, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for the opportunity, Anwar. It's great that I've been invited to discuss this. It is actually a very interesting area of law for me, and I have a big passion for small to medium-sized businesses. We are a boutique firm practicing in Pretoria and Johannesburg, BPG Incorporated, and we specialize in different areas of the law, ranging from family law, commercial law, labor law, criminal law, you name it. So we have a couple of our directors are specializing in specific fields, but I have been practicing those areas of law for more than 10 years today.
Okay, so I can safely call you an expert in the field. Your qualifications, Eugene, I would imagine you're a partner in the firm Brits Pretoria Scrubler.
Yes. So my qualifications are it's LLB degree that I've studied, also the BCom law degree that I've also done. I'm also a qualified mediator, and then like I said, we basically focus on a myriad of legal aspects, especially pertaining to business.
Yeah, I think we're going to get along just well because I also am a BCom law graduate from what was then UDW, now known as UKZN. But I never went on to complete the LLB, but BCom law I have. Remember those good days when we used to have to do a course in Latin. I don't know if you also did Latin while at university, but we had to pass a course in Latin while at university.
Luckily, I skipped that one, but it's good to meet a fellow masochist that also decided to study law.
Okay. Eugene, I'm going to start off by just giving a bit of a background. And I think lots and lots of us entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs get into business, want to get into business. And our very sole concern at the time is to try to make a success of that business from a financial perspective, to take a rand and turn it into 2, and then to take 2 rand and turn it into 4, and in that way grow the business. And what is often overlooked are the legalities concerning the starting of that business. And then we get so involved in this business, in growing the business, in kind of turning over, that the legalities get kind of forgotten. They fall behind until we hit a roadblock at some stage where we realize how important these things are. So let's start with an example of a person that's wanting to start their own business. And what would be the first thing that they would have to do?
I would say firstly is most important to decide what type of legal entity you wish to register. Now, there are partnerships, sole proprietorships, companies, and personal liability companies, depending on the industry that you are entering into. Now, the important thing that people sometimes miss is the concept of legal personality. Now, companies have legal personality, and that protects you against creditors. It protects you against personal liability. Now, what I would suggest any person that starts out and wants to open a business, that they make use and register a company, make use of that legal entity. The legal entity as company will protect you by distancing yourself from the personal liability aspects of a possible collection by creditors. So I would say that would be the first point of departure, is to decide which type of legal entity you wish to have. And like a sole proprietorship, you will always have the personal liability aspect when it comes to payment of debt. And that, to some extent, is a dangerous situation if you do take the rate at which small businesses fail, mainly because of their inability to pay debts, and that exposes your personal assets to your creditors. So I would say that would be a very good starting point.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you a bit there, Eugene, because all of us start off with good intention, and good intention means paying off our debts if and when they are incurred, even if we have to dig into our pocket, because we don't want anybody to say we so-called took them for a ride. Yes, in businesses, and especially as you've alluded to in small businesses, there is a percentage of failure, and I would say a high percentage of failure, because a lot of people try their hand at something and not knowing what the dangers are, and obviously try to make a success of it, but don't always succeed. However, there's always the intention that even if I do not succeed, I'm going to try my level best to pay off those that I'm owing money to, those that have been good to me, those that may have extended some credit to me. So then they would go into a sole proprietorship. However, going into a company, yes, protects you, but then the intention for setting up that company shouldn't be to avoid creditors, but rather because that's the right legal way of going in terms of this entity that's being set up.
Yes, please, though, don't get me wrong. I'm not alluding to the fact that it is not a person's intention not to pay their creditors. Unfortunately, with our legal or our economic climate, it is sometimes unavoidable that people end up in situations where they are unable to pay their debts regardless of their good intentions. And just as an added area of protection, just to enable them to continue to some extent living their life with the assets that they do have, that type of legal entity will give them the most protection. With regards to payment of their debts, etc., I mean that doesn't preclude them from paying their creditors. It is not ethically viable for anyone to hide behind their company just to avoid paying their creditors and keeping, everything that they've got. So please don't get me wrong. I'm not referring to people's poor intentions by using that legal entity. It is just basically set up that way to protect a person when they do enter into a business where they are exposed to a myriad of unpredictability and to some extent, they need to protect themselves and their families.
Excellent. Eugene, from a cost perspective, people are starting off, they don't have deep pockets to dig into. So they're always looking for what is the cheapest way of starting off. Now, if we look at sole proprietorship as compared to companies, and I know in the old days there used to be something called closed corporations, which I think are not allowed any longer. But what would be the cheapest way of starting off?
Look, to be completely honest, you can register your own company for, if I remember the amount correctly, would be about 180 Rand.
Okay.
Registering a company is not expensive unless you start buying shelf companies or you ask, you get companies to register your entity for you. You can actually do it yourself. CIPC's website is actually quite easy to navigate. So in terms of a cost perspective, I don't think that is a major consideration when deciding whether you want to use a company or a sole proprietorship. I think in the end, my starting point, my advice to smaller companies are always the following. Start your company off or your business off as if you are already a large company. So the structures, the policies, documentation, the contracts, everything that you decide to set up should be as if your company is already growing. So moving from a sole proprietorship to a company at a later stage, it can be done, and a lot of people do that. But especially in the beginning portions of your business, I would suggest just making use of the legal entity of the company as a starting point, just because of the fact that it does limit your risk, like I said before. And also that for the reason that you don't begin a business with the intention of keeping it extremely small. Perhaps some people do that, but just always set yourself up for growth. So that is my 2 cents about that point.
Okay, what would be the first steps that you would take in starting your journey? Would you go to a set of accountants, or would you go to a legal firm to assist?
So it all depends on what you want to do and how much money you want to spend. Like I said, that it is not a difficult website to navigate should you choose to register your own company. I do suggest that you consult with an attorney or an accountant or auditor regarding the terms of your memorandum of incorporation when you do register your company. I'll always suggest that you approach an expert to assist you in any portion of your business. And I cannot overstate the importance of a good, reliable accountant. Look, the point of a business is to make money, obviously, and the person managing the finances and keeping book of your finances and tax your tax responsibilities is extremely important. So when you start up your company and you decide to register it, it is important to at least consult someone to assist you to the extent that is necessary to have your memorandum of incorporation drafted. The CIPC does make provision for a standard MOI that is quite decent, so it's not necessary for you to go into debt, depending on how complex you want to make your company. So that, with regards to registration of the company, I think that would be a good starting point. Then, from then on, I would, after obviously getting an accountant that's decent, or if you have the skills to do it yourself, then you can get that out of the way. But I would then suggest working on some contracts.
Okay. Contracts, examples?
All right. So your employment contracts, service level agreements, your terms and conditions, those types of contracts that you would be using almost daily. It's with people always have good intentions when making deals. The initial business relationships are usually like romantic relationships. It starts off great, but in the end, if you don't define the terms of your relationship clearly enough, then people forget what the initial incentive was, the initial terms, and it kind of becomes a gray area. So especially with regards to employment contracts, setting out and defining your employment terms very, very concisely and clearly is extremely important, just to regulate your relationship with your employees, and so that the expectations with regards to your employees and with you, what you expect from them, is clearly defined.
Is there a legal obligation nowadays to have an employment contract in place with each of your employees? I mean, is this a legal requirement or a union requirement, and would that have to be strictly implemented?
Technically, it's not necessary. The Basic Conditions of Employment Act regulates, obviously, the basic conditions of employment. So if you do not have an employment contract, you would then basically refer back to the Act to ascertain the rights of that employee. But it is a very good idea to have an employment contract drafted that sets out the specific expectations that you have of an employee. So the Basic Conditions of Employment Act will not directly be industry specific. Let's say you have an employee that is required to do a specific, almost unique set of tasks. It is always better just to have those tasks set out in your employment contract, just to define your relationship with that employee very, very clearly.
Okay, Eugene, some of the common legal pitfalls that small businesses especially should be aware of?
Yeah, I would say that the first thing is ignoring the use of contracts. So let's say I'm starting up a business, very excited about the business. I've got a bunch of clients coming in. There's a possibility of deals, and in that state of over enthusiasm, people tend to enter into oral agreements that does not have, very, very clear terms of that relationship, that business relationship. And then when things go sour, they've got very little documentation and documentary history to fall back on. So starting off your business with a very good service level agreement, terms and conditions that you use almost religiously to ensure that everyone is aware of the expectations of that specific deal is extremely important. The other one is obviously the non-compliance with employment laws. Like I mentioned, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and the Labor Relations Act. It's very important to familiarize yourself with the terms of those acts, just to ensure that your labor portion of your business is going well. So let's say the basic principle of business is to make some money. Now, the second one is to keep the money in the bank. Now, if you are facing CCMA charges, you will obviously be using the funds in your bank account to either pay compensation to those employees or fighting litigation battles. And it's the same with the service level agreement, where one of the parties did not comply with the terms. Your contract is just as good as the amount of money that you have to enforce that contract. So no one, or very few people, actually budget for litigation. So the better your contract is drafted, the better the terms are in terms of dispute resolution in your contract, the less money you'll be spending on litigation in the end. And then also data privacy and data security is extremely, extremely important. There are a lot of hacking attempts, phishing attempts, cybersecurity issues that really, really hamper businesses. And the proper training of your staff, proper security measures in terms of your online security, that is all very, very important to get in place. And then the other aspects would be basic compliance with the Financial Intelligence Center. Let's say the POPI Act, Protection of Personal Information Act, Consumer Protection Act compliance. Those are all things that needs to be very, very clearly understood. and implement it in your business.
I think as a person starting out in business, all of these factors that you've mentioned, which are critically important, can be absolutely overwhelming at the same time, because one firstly hasn't got proper knowledge of these things. Secondly, the sole or the primary concern at that time is how can we make this a success? And making it a success more or less means how can we trade through? How can we set up a customer base? How can we satisfy those customers? What is our advantage, our competitive advantage against competitors? Where can I source successfully? Where can I source cheapest? Where can I source good quality? And the legalities, again, seem to be a bit kind of forgotten or not really taken too seriously at that moment in time, again, until we hit the pitfalls. Now, you've mentioned CIP, PC, and all of the other good things, which we really need to be aware of. But then, at what stage does one say, well, this is all getting a bit too much for me, and basically need to kind of take on a legal firm to hold your hand and walk you through the process?
It's absolutely overwhelming. Unfortunately, our laws require a lot of compliance, and some start-out business owners will find themselves working more on compliance than on their business, and that is unfortunate. But there are very, very good reasons for all of these laws that regulate it, especially with regards to the Consumer Protection Act that needs to be implemented. So, taking into account the time available for an entrepreneur, I mean, the basic things that you need to focus on, like you said, is making a success of the business. Now, in terms of time, there are a myriad of experts that will be able to assist you with regards to compliance. A lot of accountants do that, also do that these days, just to assist you with that. I remember when I started out in business, I did approach an accountant to assist me with the basic compliance issues, especially with financial intelligence center, tax compliance, that type of thing, because you simply don't have the time to do it. It does take a large portion of your time just to ensure that your business is compliant. But, the downside of it is that each of these sections of legislation comes with fines. The Protection of Personal Information Act, comes with a fine of up to 10 million and 12 months imprisonment. So it is definitely something that needs to be taken into account when you start out your business, and the manner in which you deal with information, the manner in which you deal with your client, the way in which you approach your marketing. It's all very, very important that you do take cognizance of these different areas of legislation because it can negatively affect your business going forward. I mean, there would be nothing more disheartening than building a successful business and just to be struck with a fine, that cuts into your profits just due to the fact that one compliance issue was not properly dealt with in the beginning.
Okay. Eugene, I have a question that's come through, a WhatsApp question, and I'm going to ask you that, and then thereafter we'll go for a small ad break and then continue the program. So this question says, Salams Anwar, I have a close corporation which is dormant. Please advise if it's feasible to hold on to it or should I sell it? It has no assets or liabilities and was incorporated in 1992. I retired in February 2021. Please advise.
The main thing is, do you want to continue with that business? So
it seems not as if not, because he says I retired in February 2021, and this close corporation has no assets or liabilities and was incorporated in 1992. And it says it's dormant.
I would suggest, apologies for interrupting you, I'd suggest that CC be deregistered with CIPC. So the process is dictated by CIPC and can be simply done by uploading certain documents that is required for the deregistration of that CC. I would do that as soon as possible just to avoid possible legal implications in terms of bookkeeping that is, or annual returns that's not been filed, other compliance issues that might pop up. So I would suggest that the listener approach I think an accountant will be able to assist if they do attend to liquidation matters, and just to assist with deregistering that CC as soon as possible, just to avoid possible problems in the future.
Would I be correct in saying that even though this may be dormant, there is still an obligation to file annual tax returns, even though it's no assets and liabilities and dormant?
Look, from a litigation point of view, it's difficult to say exactly what the possible risks are. I do not know. There could be some issues that all litigation issues that might be able to or might come up that will need to be defended. There could be annual return issues that might be required. As I said, I'm not necessarily an expert in that specific field of bookkeeping, accounting, audit issues. So it would be advisable just to approach a accountant, firstly, to have that CTP registered. That would be my advice.
We talk now of the digital age. Everything is kind of going online, more especially post-COVID or during COVID, where there was this huge move towards online shopping, online everything, simply because people couldn't move around. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that with online comes a lot of pitfalls as well. So tell us a little bit about the digital age and some of the concerns that you guys as legal practitioners would have about the digital age.
All right. Specifically with regards to attorneys, I can tell you, I think, at least two stories about how that has impacted attorneys' firms that I've dealt with, and then also clients, especially with regards to selling and buying property. Now, the main issue that popped up was intercepting of emails. And so in a nutshell, the email was intercepted, the banking details of the attorney's firm was changed, and the client then paid the funds into the incorrect bank account, and the money was never to be seen again. Now, that can be extremely devastating for a person like that, buying a house, because that, obviously takes out the bulk of your personal finances. And that situation could have been avoided just by a simple phone call or a visit to the attorney's firm, just to ensure that the banking details are correct. The other situation was a ransomware incident where one of the attorney's firm's employees clicked on the wrong email. The ransomware software was downloaded onto the system, and the entire server with all the information was not able to be accessed, obviously causing a massive disruption. And the problem with that is, even though you do pay the ransom, there's really no guarantee that you will once again obtain access to your information. So, it is a very, very real risk, especially with regards to online shopping purchases that are done, stock being bought online, communication being done online. It is a very, very dangerous situation that we're actually in, and especially now with regards to Zoom, where AI is now has been implemented. I think there was a business in China where a Zoom call was actually the parties partaking in the Zoom call their faces were actually changed by AI. Convincing the firm to transfer funds over to a different account. So, it is a very big problem, and it is causing a lot of disruptions and uncertainties in the legal field with regards to this, especially due to the fact that the people that are scamming you are usually anonymous and to some extent, a large extent, untraceable. So it is a very, very big issue, especially in the legal industry as well.
I can resonate with the first incident that you quoted, where the bank account details were changed because a very, very good friend of mine who's in the motor car industry related an incident whereby he bought a car from somebody else, another motor car dealer, and then paid him because this guy is completely, very meticulous about making sure his payments are completely up to date. And then 3 days later, he said he got a call from that motor car dealer to say, well, I'm unlike you, but you haven't paid for the car. And he says, what do you mean? I paid immediately. And then it came to the attention that actually, as you mentioned, the email was intercepted, bank account details changed, and the money went to the wrong person. So, I mean, that's something that we need to be very, very careful about. And recently I had the incident, and this may be one way of kind of making sure, where somebody was owing my firm a fair amount of money, fairly large sum. And they said to me, give me the bank account details and we'll transfer 100 rands. And once you have the 100 rands, please confirm that you received it so that we can make payment of the larger amount to the same bank account. In that way, ensuring that if there was some sort of interception to the wrong bank account, you would lose 100 rand, which and it will be picked up. So maybe another way of kind of making sure is when you're making payment to somebody for the very first time, and they give you the bank account details, make a small payment, maybe 100 rand, confirm that they've received it, and only when they have confirmed that they received it, then make some larger payments. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very, very good idea. I've not thought of that. Something to be said for the creativity of people in regards to these types of things. The other thing, it's actually such a difficult situation if you've not had let's say a phone conversation with the person that you are paying. Sometimes even the number is intercepted and you're actually speaking to the scammer. And that deal could also go haywire. They'll be receiving the 100 rand and then also the 100,000. But I think with regards to the best way to do interactions, and I know it isn't always possible logistically, is to do a face-to-face meeting or go to an office and to the dealership perhaps and do the payment from there, verifying the banking details. But it isn't always possible, so I think people need to be creative. The scammers are endlessly creative. I mean, if you have a 9-to-5 job doing something productive, you become an expert at it, and it's the same with those people. They do it, every day. So we kind of need to stay ahead of that, by being a bit more cautious, a bit more creative, with regards to how we approach these types of things. But I actually do like that recommendation very, very much. I think that is a very good idea.
Okay. We mentioned earlier about dispute resolution and things. Now, how can small businesses effectively resolve disputes or legal conflicts without incurring excessive costs or damage to their reputation?
Look, the easy answer to that question is usually mediation. Now, it is not necessarily a rule that mediation is going to be much less expensive. You're still going to incur some costs just to try to resolve the dispute, but it is a faster way of resolving the dispute, and also the manner in which your dispute is resolved depends entirely upon the parties involved. Now, whether mediation works or not depends on the type of person that you're dealing with. It's very, very difficult to mediate a matter where the parties are unreasonable towards each other. So, everything has its place. But what I do suggest is at the point where conflict arises, it is important to get a third party involved. Let's say an attorney, just to negotiate the situation from the get-go. I think from personal experience, that is the easiest and the most cost-effective way of resolving a dispute quickly, just to ensure that the negotiations start as soon as the dispute arises. Sometimes some of my clients do leave it for too long, and by the time it gets to me, a summons has already been issued, and the relationship has broken down to the extent where the parties are no longer talking to each other. So the easiest way to ensure that disputes are resolved quickly and cheaply is to ensure that the avenues of communication remain open. And proper negotiation, if you do use a well-qualified attorney that is well versed in negotiation, you can avoid a litigious matter quite easily. But the alternative is mediation. Mediation is making a massive footprint in South Africa, and the courts also prefer that matters firstly go to mediation before it comes to the courts, purely based on the fact that the court rolls are so full that matters take years to finalize. And with mediation, I mean, if you really put your back into it, a dispute can be resolved amicably, within a week instead of 3 years. So my suggestion would be, either approach an attorney to assist with the negotiation process, or to refer the matter to mediation as soon as possible. And in order to ensure that the matter goes to mediation, you can include that type of dispute resolution clause in your contract, in your service level agreements or terms and conditions, to ensure that both parties are bound to some extent to first try mediation and negotiation before a matter is instituted in court.
Yes, that would be excellent if we could all resolve things via mediation. But I think the challenge there is also most parties would feel that if the mediation didn't go in their direction, that the mediator would be biased and favoring the other party, and that unfortunately they kind of tend to accept it when it's a judgment of the court of law, but would be a little bit more reluctant to accept it through a mediation process.
The nice thing about mediation is the mediator facilitates a conversation. So the mediator cannot make a ruling. The mediator can also not pick sides. So the manner in which the dispute or the direction in which the resolution goes is entirely up to the parties. If you do find that your mediator is picking sides, that is an unfortunate situation, and it could, really put an end to that negotiation. But if you do have a competent mediator, the mediator will not pick a side. But regardless of the fact, if in the event that a mediator does pick a side, the outcome of the mediation is entirely up to the parties. So it doesn't, to some extent, doesn't really matter. A mediator that does pick sides will obviously make one of the parties very uncomfortable with the negotiation process. But hopefully that is not a very, very common theme with mediators currently. But it is important to always pick an accredited mediator that is well experienced with the particular type of dispute that you want to resolve. But like I said, the nice thing about mediation is that the solution to the issue is up to the parties, and the mediator is not in a position to make a ruling or to pick a side with regards to who, let's say, in brackets, wins the argument.
Okay, let's move on. We've got a few minutes left to the issue of intellectual property rights. And I'm going to give a small example of maybe launching a brand onto the market of anything. I'm in a clothing business, so let's take a new brand of suits, because that's what I kind of do. And what would be the requirement in terms of protecting that brand? Because the last thing you need is to launch a brand, spend money on the launch of a brand, and once that brand becomes successful, you get somebody else that comes and copies you, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that is that could kill a business right off the bat. So I would suggest that you register your intellectual property with CIPC. So you would be registering your trademark. That registration would be forever, but you will have to renew your registration every 10 years. So just make sure that you comply with the requirements of proper registration. And if your suit is a specific type of suit and it's a new type of invention, then you can register a patent to prevent others from using your invention without permission. And you can do that only for a limited period of 20 years, or you can register a design to get the exclusive rights to use that design and prevent others from manufacturing or importing or using that. So to register whatever you have created, your intellectual property, with the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. There is a fee payable that comes with every type of registration, but that would be your best option with regards to protecting those rights. And if there's an infringement of your intellectual property rights, you will then have a good basis on which to stand to enforce your rights against that person and then institute the damages claim.
Okay. Eugene, before we shut off, in general day-to-day occurrences that you come across, there's some common ones that you're probably seeing all the time. Anything that you need to kind of make us aware of so that we don't fall into the so-called the same traps?
The most important one, and I find this one to be the most common, and it's actually a very simple one. That is that people do not know to a very, very detailed extent with who they're doing business with. Let's say you're doing business with a company. If you only have the company name, you don't have the registration number, address, or the parties involved. It's very difficult that let's say when you're suing that company for payment and you don't have the exact particulars, it's very difficult to actually find that company. You also get the companies that are set up just to deal with creditors, whereas the assets are kept in a different company. So it's very, very important to do a proper due diligence before actually doing business with a specific entity. Not everyone is, honest, law-abiding citizens, and some people do try anything they can to get away with whatever they can. So I would suggest that when you first encounter a company and you decide to do business with that company or with whatever entity or with the person, make sure that you get the proper company name, registration number, you get the actual business address, you get the full names and identity numbers of the directors or the people that you're actually doing business with, and then also get their addresses. So FICA also requires you to actually get the identity documents and the proof of residences of the people that you're doing business with, with the intention of preventing money laundering. But it also protects your business when it does come to litigation and you don't know who you did business with. So I would say that would be a very, very important thing. And the other suggestion that I would make is with regards to suretyships. Like I said at the beginning of our conversation, is that some people do use the company entity, legal entity, to avoid paying their debts. If you are able to include a suretyship clause in your service level agreement, when you bind one of the directors or a natural person to the agreement for payment to your company, it just gives you such a big, massively better chance of actually collecting your money from a person and not from a legal entity that might be in deregistration or in liquidation. So those are the two suggestions that I would make, and I do really hammer on my clients to try to get suretyships signed, and then also to ensure that they know exactly who they're doing business with. I think those are the two main things that I deal with on a daily basis.
Okay, something that just come to mind that I'm going to conclude on, and maybe you can guide me here, is in the daily course of business, very often we get phone calls from other companies, maybe in a similar industry, whereby people have applied to open new accounts and they've kind of used us as a reference, so to speak, to say, there's a trade reference. And then we get a call from a company saying, we want a reference on XYZ. Now, from a legal perspective, in providing this reference, whether it's good or bad, would we be infringing some sort of a law or protection of personal information, or are we obliged to provide this information if requested?
Look, technically, you are not allowed to give out personal information to anyone without the person owning that information's permission. So I would say it's a bit of a slippery slope doing that. So if you must also remember, with the creative ways in which people sometimes try to get personal information, to commit crimes, what they call spear phishing is a more specific, targeted way of getting information from a company. I would be very careful giving out any form of information out to anyone, just based on the fact that you do open yourself up for possible legal implications in the event that someone suffers a loss as a result of the fact that you gave that type of information out to someone else.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Eugene. Thanks once again for giving up your evening. You've been very insightful. It's been lovely chatting to you, and we hope to get you back onto the airwaves of Radio Al Ansar sometime in the future on a specific legal matter. And I know I can call on you. So thank you once again on behalf of Radio Al Ansar on the Business Matters program. And a reminder that the Business Matters program is brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Commerce. And with that, it's wassalamu alaikum from me, Anwar Moolla. And again, a very big thank you to Eugene Meitjies.